is the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. This broadcast is in text, audio and video and is accessed on wia.org.au.
Hello there, I'm Graham, VK4BB, VK4 Baker with the Father's Day edition, September 4, 2022 of WIA National News. This week, we've got Jason, VK2 LAW, Felix, VK4 FUQ, and Cole, VK3 GTV. And kicking it off, a broadcast actually due a couple of weeks back, which we've just received, all ready to go. It's WIA Director Chris, VK3FY.
The board recently received the quarterly QSL report from John, VK3JSL, at the last board meeting held on Tuesday, the 23rd of August, 2022. The following was noted. 1. The WIA QSL Bureau has received over 37,000 QSL cards in the past 6 months up until the end of June 2022. The WIA QSL Bureau had by that time sent out all cards to registered members and clubs. In addition, the Bureau by mid-July 2022 had received a further 13,000 QSL cards, which indicated that the Bureau is nearing pre-pandemic QSL inward numbers. The report also indicated that the Bureau are meeting their minimum obligation of mailing out at least once per month for each state and territory in Australia. There are other special arrangements for VK9, VK0 and special event stations. The WIA QSL Bureau is not the only bureau in Australia, and there are others. It is imperative that one is registered with the WIA Bureau if you wish to utilise this service. Please note that this is a service that is provided to members and affiliated clubs of the WIA only. Just some minor stats. Japan makes up around 50% of the Inwards Bureau and Germany around 20%. In June, Sim, VK4SJ, retired as the VK4 QSL manager. Bernard, VK4KX, has moved into this role. The WA board wishes to thank Sim for his service to the VK4 hand community and appreciate Bernard moving into the role to ensure a smooth transition. 73 is from Chris, VK3FY, for the WAA National News.
Who listens to radio?
I'm Matthew, VK2YAP.
This is VK4 Golf Romeo Bravo, Gary at Ferryland.
This is Linda, VK7QP.
Peter, VK8ZZ.
This is Mark, VK4DMH.
I'm Alec, VK2APC.
John, 5DJ.
Now, international news with Jason, VK2LAW.
The leading report from Region 1, WRC 23 preparatory activities are intensifying. As WRC 23 gets closer, so the preparatory activities for the agenda items are increasing in intensity. The most pressing for the amateur community is the 23cm band radio navigation satellite service coexistence agenda item 9.1b. Following presentations given during the IARU Region 1 Interim Conference and the Ham Radio 2022 event, the IARU was kindly invited to present the 23cm band situation to the EME community at the 19th EME Conference in Prague. Reactions were mixed. However, the IARU maintains its objective to find a solution that can facilitate all the amateur radio applications active in the band today, including EME operations, even if some compromises will be inevitable. To progress the 23cm band studies, ITUR Working Party 4C will meet during the second week of September. At this meeting, the technical studies regarding the amateur service and radio navigation satellite service will be developed further. The IARU Global 9.1b team is preparing contributions and will be participating in the meeting. In news from Region 2, the Ohio Amateur Radio Emergency Service, ARIS, has completed a dry run exercise for the Perry Nuclear Power Plant in Lake County, Ohio. ARRL Ohio Section Emergency Coordinator Stan Broadway, November 8, Bravo Hotel Lima, said the drill was practice for the federally judged exercise scheduled for September. The Ohio Emergency Operations Center, EOC, amateur station Whiskey 8 Sierra Golf Tango, was utilised and on the air to communicate with several counties in northeast Ohio. Amateur radio serves in the emergency planning as a backup communications resource. The actual exercise is focused more on the power plant and its operation. In real life, this was a low-key type of exercise. It does not involve a lot of hams or activity, just establishes the line of communication, said N8BHL. It's satisfying to know, through many conversations during the planning stage, that amateur radio is a key ingredient to assure communication with the state. Ohio ARIS is also working on a simulated emergency test set drill for October 1. Volunteer monitors send ham commendations and notices. A recent trip to the mailbox brought surprises for some US hams, some pleasant surprises, others not so pleasant. Sal Emby, Kilo Bravo 3, Tango Zulu Delta explains.
The Volunteer Monitor Program, begun in 2020 as a cooperative effort between the FCC and the ARRL, recently released its report for July of this year. The program delivers commendations as well as notices of improper operation to hams as a way of boosting compliance with amateur radio license regulations. The latest commendations include a ham in Columbia, South Carolina, for helping amateurs complete programs for the Community Emergency Response Team and for assisting those involved in the county's Emergency Operations Center. Commendations were also given to hams in Poughkeepsie, New York, for conducting the Community Bulletin Board on a local repeater. Hams in Roslyn, Pennsylvania were also given commendations for involving the Philmont Mobile Radio Club in field day and mesh operations. Meanwhile, notices for unlicensed operation were sent to logging companies in Washington state for their use of 2-meter amateur frequencies. Another notice for unlicensed operations was sent to an operator in Indian Hills, California, for operating 2-meter simplex APRS during a high-altitude balloon flight 1 year after the operator's license had been canceled by the FCC. Notices for operating FT8 outside license privileges were issued to a technician class operator in Martinez, California, and a general class operator in Trenton, New Jersey. Notices for operating on SSB outside their general class privileges were issued to hams in Massapequa, New York, and Trenton, New Jersey. This is Sel Emby, KB3 TZD.
Ham Sci founder and University of Scranton Professor Nathaniel Frissell, Whiskey 2 November Alpha Foxtrot, has been awarded a nearly $400,000 US grant from the National Science Foundation to study changes in the ionosphere at dawn and dusk, a period we hams know as grey line, and during solar eclipses. According to the university, W2NAF will work with students there and at Case Western Reserve University, as well as amateurs around the country, to gather data using so-called GRAPE receivers designed using another NSF grant for the Ham Sci Personal Space Weather Station project. There will be an annular solar eclipse visible in the continental US next year, as well as a total eclipse in 2024, noting that these will be the last solar eclipses to traverse the USA until 2044. The grant will fund an additional 30 GRAPE receivers that will be provided to Ham Sci volunteers across North America. The stations will run continuously at least through to 2025, the end of the project period, monitoring WWV and CHU to collect data daily at sunrise and sunset, as well as during the 2 solar eclipses. For VK1 WIA National News, in Sydney, I'm Jason, VK2 LAW.
From Australia, this is the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. Available on RF and on demand 24/7 from the wia.org.au website.
John VK4JJW here with a story about Field Day. No, not that field day. For this story, we're going straight to the field. The cornfield, that is. I've got kernels of wisdom to share today. If you're stalking the newest and most unusual kind of antenna, look no further than the 2 8-foot-tall green stalks that Kevin K0KLB harvested recently in an Iowa cornfield to create the homebrew vertical he called the corn tenor. Relying on the combination of 2 stalks plus their inherent conductive moisture, Kevin had a hunch that by joining them and adding a copper wire, mounting them on a wooden batten and adding radials, he might get an SWR acceptable enough for some QSOs on 20 metres. With a little adjusting, the corn tenor tuned right up in the field and, well, things were soon popping. Operating at 5 watts QRP, he logged 2 contacts in Texas and had a few other contacts that almost made it into the log. Not quite smooth as silk, but for a corn tenor, downright amazing. You can see Kevin and the corn tenor in action on YouTube at the link in the text version of this week's WIA National News, wia.org.au. He's got a real antenna farm, and yes, he's having a field day. Meanwhile, one lingering question remains: whether this innovative vertical can hold its own in a real amateur radio DX contest. We're all ears.
Now, operational news with Felix, VK4FUQ.
Hello there. Now, contest-wise 2022. JARL sponsored All Asian DX contest. Phone this weekend. Bands 160, 80, 40, 20, 15, 10 metres. The RSGB HF SSB field day runs from 1300 hours UTC on Saturday the 3rd to 1300 hours UTC on Sunday the 4th, using the 3.5 to 28 MHz bands where contests are permitted. The exchange is signal report and serial number. The IAA Region 1 field day runs for the same 24-hour period as the RSGB HF field day. Using SSB only on the 3.5 to 28 MHz bands, the exchange is signal report and serial number. Saturday the 3rd of September, the CW Ops CW Open contest runs for 24 hours from 0000 hours UTC using only CW on the 1.8 to 28 MHz bands, where contests are permitted. The exchange is the serial number and your name. WIA NZART Oceania contest. CW second full weekend in October, 0600 hours UTC Saturday to 0600 hours UTC Sunday. Phone first full weekend in October, 0600 hours UTC Saturday to 0600 hours UTC Sunday. Log deadline for all logs 31 October. WIA VHF UHF field days. Spring 0100 hours UTC Saturday 26 through 0059 hours UTC Sunday 27 November. 160 metre CW contest, ARL sponsored. Objective is for amateurs worldwide to exchange information with W/V amateurs on the 160 metre band, CW. Dates: first full weekend in December 2 to 4, 2022. Contest period begins 2200 hours UTC Friday, ends 15:59 hours UTC Sunday. This is a 42-hour period with no time limitation. Logs are due within 7 days after the event is over. 10 metre contest, ARL sponsored. For amateurs worldwide to exchange QSO information with as many stations as possible on the 10 metre band. Dates: second full weekend in December. Starts 0000 hours UTC Saturday, runs through 23:59 hours UTC Sunday. December 10, 11, 2022. Logs are due within 7 days after the event is over. DX window. The Transatlantic Centenary Tests. The RSGB are hosting an international amateur radio activation, the Transatlantic Centenary Tests on the HF bands, for the entire month of December 2022, to commemorate the centenary of the achievement of amateur transatlantic communication during the transatlantic tests that were held between 1921 and 1923. In anticipation of this century celebration, with the assistance of Opcom, the UK licensing authority, the RSGB have reactivated 5 call signs that they held in the 1920s. G5WS used for the 1922 tests, the first to get across. G5AT used for the 1923 tests. G6XX used for the 1923 tests. G6ZZ used for the first amateur tests on a moving railway train in 1924. G3DR, Scottish Highlands Call, GM3DR. United States Special Event. Look for Special Event Station N3U/FLT93. 3NU/United Flight 93. To be activated once again between September the 9th and the 14th. To remind amateur radio operators worldwide of the tragic events that happened near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, New York City and Washington, D.C. on September 11th, 2001. This will be the 13th year for N3U and this memorial operation. N3U was first activated in 2010 and has continued every year since. We also ran a special Aruba call P41 USA for several years, but COVID-19 got in the way. Activity will be on all bands that are open at the time, using mostly FT8/FT4, as well as CW and SSB. QSL via club call sign W3PN QIZ.com if needed. LOTW will also be used for logging all digital SSB and CW. In the world of DX, be listening on the HF bands for 8N650JP. The special call sign being used by the Japan Amateur Radio League's Okinawa branch. HAMs are marking the 50th anniversary of the return of the Okinawa Prefecture to Japan from the United States administration. The call sign 8N650JP is active through to the 30th of September. QSOs will be confirmed automatically through the Bureau. Timor-Leste 4W. Satoshi JH2 EUV is QRV as 4W/JH2 EUV. Activities on the 40 to 10 meters using mostly FT8. QSL to home call JH2 EUV. For VK1WIA National News, I'm Felix VK4FU QNing.
This is the home service of the Wireless Institute of Australia through VK1WIA. Now, special interest group news with Cole, VK3GTV.
Hello, first up it's Worldwide Special Interest Groups, ATV. The 10th annual Amateur TV QSO party was held Friday the 26th and Saturday the 27th of August, with more than 40 stations exchanging high-quality digital video from various locations in Sydney, Melbourne, Port Pirie and Whyalla. On the Saturday, operators from the USA joined in from California, Colorado, Nevada, Arizona, Ohio and New York, exchanging valuable information on equipment, techniques and renewing friendships. Noted was not only the high standard of the shacks, but the various homebrewed digital transmitters and ATV equipment displayed. The dedication and self-training needed to master their commercial audio-video processing equipment and produce such high-quality results is commendable. Then on the Saturday afternoon, one station operated portable from a Whyalla, South Australia beach, transmitting high-quality digital pictures back to their local repeater to be seen worldwide. Peter Cossins, VK3BFG, was the coordinator and did a sterling job of organising the event. All in all, it was very successful, with many watching via the British Amateur TV Club streamer website and with unanimous agreement to be held again next year. Worldwide Special Interest Group's Final Frontier. The SpaceX Dragon supply freighter undocked from the International Space Station August 19 with about 2 tons of cargo, experiments and a leaky spacesuit. The unpiloted cargo carrier brought home a spacesuit worn by European astronaut Matthias Maurer when the station crew noticed water leaking in Maurer's helmet after he returned to the lab's pressurized airlock. NASA has suspended use of US spacesuits for non-emergency spacewalks until the suit is inspected and analysis done. Also, cosmonaut Oleg Artemyev's spacewalk was cut short by a suit battery issue, and with NASA's suits grounded at the moment, the ISS is running out of EVA options. AMSAT EA satellites to launch in September. Felix EA4 GQS reports Spain's latest amateur radio satellites to launch will be Genesis G and Genesis J on September 11, and you can come for the ride, as this flight will be streamed by Everyday Astronaut. That's at everydayastronaut.com. The AMSAT Bulletin Post says, This is to confirm that the launch of our new Genesis G and Genesis J satellites with Firefly will take place September 11, with the launch window starting at 22 hours GMT from Vandenberg. The expected orbit altitude is 300 kilometres with an inclination of 137 degrees. This will be the second attempt of Firefly to reach orbit after the first attempt made in 2021 had to be aborted after 2 minutes of flight, causing Genesis N and Genesis L to be lost. Genesis G/Astroland 1, 145.875 MHz uplink, modes FM voice with no subtone, and FSK 50 BPS, AFSK, AX25, APRS 1200/2400 BPS, 436.888 MHz downlink, modes FM voice, CW FSK 50 BPS, FM voice beacon with AM2 SAT call sign, Genesis J Astroland 2, 145.925 MHz uplink, modes FM voice with no subtone, and FSK 50 BPS, AFSK, AX25, APRS 1200/2400 BPS, 436.666 MHz downlink, modes FM voice, CW FSK 50 BPS, slow scan TV, Robot 36, FM voice beacon with M3 SAT call sign. We encourage everyone to try to receive their first transmissions once the first Keplerians are available. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, Freemasons. Call CQ More Light. Masonic Lodge is on the air. An amateur radio special event will be on the air Saturday, September 24. The event is open to all amateur radio operators, and the idea of the event grew out of the realization that many Freemasons also have a love for amateur radio. The object is to promote public awareness of ham radio and Freemasonry, to promote fraternal bonds within the ranks of free and accepted Masonic lodges and its many amateur radio operators who are also brothers in the fraternity, and to encourage contact with other amateur radio operators around the state, country, and world. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, IOTA, OC240, Papua New Guinea. Rolf, DL7VEE, has announced the following. The team from Germany is planning another lightweight but serious tea expedition to Papua New Guinea from October 25 until November 10. The call sign will be P29RO, and the German team will be active from Lolota Island, OC240, in Papua New Guinea's coastal island, East Iota Group. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, Radio Amateur Oldtimers. As Clive VK6CSW reminds us that tomorrow is the first Monday of the month, time for the Radio Amateurs Oldtimers Club of Australia's September Bulletin to go to air this month, as well as the latest club news.
This month, as well as the latest club news, Ron VK3AFW tells us about retirement village living. This is followed by Andrew VK3CAH with an update of other options available to keep active and on air if moving to a retirement home. I'll be reminiscing about an early electromechanically tuned radio, the SCR522 VHF RT set. And lastly, Andrew VK3CAH talks about another very special birthday this year, the inauguration of the BBC. Everyone, RAOTC members and non-members alike, is most welcome to listen to the programme and join in the callbacks afterwards. Full details of all transmission times and modes can be found on the RAOTC website at www.raotc.org.au or just Google RAOTC broadcasts. If none of the transmission times suit you, you can download the audio file at any time from today from the website. Members and friends of the RAOTC in Perth are reminded that the next lunchtime meeting at the Bayswater Hotel is on Tuesday, September the 13th. All are welcome to come along for an eyeball QSO, and for details, email coordinator Phil VK6ZKO at pbcasper@bigpond.com. I'll just spell that. Papa, Bravo, Charlie, Alpha, Sierra, Papa, Echo, Romeo, pbcasper@bigpond.com. 73 from Clive, VK6CSW.
Thanks, Clive. Once again, tune in tomorrow for the September RAOTC Bulletin. Enjoy the program and please join in the callbacks afterwards. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, Radio Scouting. And today, a very special report thanks to Alec, VK2APC.
Thank you, Cole. First Year Scout Group turns 100. Yesterday, the 3rd of September 2022, First Year Scout Group celebrated their 100th birthday. From when the group was formed in 1922, Year Scout members have taken part in many radio activities. The early years focused on Morse code and crystal sets. Several of these first Scouts took up radio communication roles during the Second World War. Their members have been taking part in JOTA and other amateur radio activities over the years. In recent times, the group is building their own shack for Scouts to use. First Year Scout Group will be on air during the next 12 months, making contacts with other operators in celebration of the group's birthday. Keep a listen out across the bands for the special event call sign Victor India 100, Yankee Sierra Golf, and say hi to the Scouts. The Scouts are designing a QSL card for the occasion to send to those that would like one. For VK1 WIA National News, I am Alec, VK2APC in Sydney. Now back over to you, Cole.
Thanks, Alec. Now on to Special Interest Groups, YOTA. Felix, VK4FUQ, has been reminding all about the upcoming WIA NZ Art Oceania contest phone on the full weekend in October. Now, word of interest to youth. A new plaque is being sponsored by Oscar Reyes, VK3TX. Many thanks to Oscar for the highest scoring youth entrant, no older than 25 years of age, from Australia in any of the phone's single operator categories. So please encourage all VK amateurs no older than 25 years of age to have a go at entering the contest. Speaking of youth, meet the 13-year-old restoring old Soviet tech in Georgia. Mariam Ben-Naki is not your usual teenager. Unlike most 13-year-old girls, she has a passion for fixing phones and computers. After school, Mariam can be found tinkering away in her family's workshop in Tbilisi. Peering into a magnifying glass, the Georgian native connects tiny parts to breathe life back into defective devices. She says she likes to replace the batteries or clean the fans, replace the paste that's used for cooling down the computers. Mariam's interest in electronics was sparked when she was 9 years old. Her stepfather, Thomas Burns, a former Hollywood cinematographer and self-proclaimed electronic nerd, was helping fix a friend's iMac computer. The colourful wires and shiny components instantly caught Mariam's eye. She said, when they took the screen off, there were a lot of small parts that I was interested in. Also these wires just going through the computer, and I was curious about them. I wanted to know how the computer worked, she recounts. I was like, let me just ask him about what this is and what that is, and maybe I could help with the things that he's doing. With her father's help, Mariam replaced the iMac's hard drive. To cultivate and hone his daughter's interest, Thomas offered to fix more friends' and family's broken gadgets, and it didn't take long for word to spread and referrals to start flowing in. Friends of friends began dropping off their broken hardware in the hopes the duo would restore them back to life. Thomas said at some point they realised that they were one Facebook page away from an actual business, and so made it official. And now it's very much a full-time endeavour, with the father-daughter team launching their family business in 2021. Thomas said they called it Mariam's Computer Repair. Not only is it projecting the fact that women can repair things, which he feels is critically important, but it's also a point of pride for them as a family. And I'm sure all of us other electronic nerds wholeheartedly agree. And that wraps up the segment for this week. I'm Cole, VK3GTV.
Across Australia, from VK1 WIA, you're tuned to the WIA National News Service. Here in Campbelltown, it can be heard on a host of frequencies, including 160 meters, 1.845 AM, 80 meters, 3.595 lower sideband, 40 meters, 7.146 AM, 20 meters, 14.170 upper sideband, 10 meters, 28.320. I am Pete, VK2LP for the WIA National News Service.
And with that, another action-packed edition of WIA National News. Next week, our WIA director is our president, Scott VK3KJ. He'll be stepping up to the mic. along with the missing report this week from Steve, VK2TSG, WIA Director. We'll bring you his late report also next week here on WIA National News. I'm Graham, VK4 Baker. Oh, and walk softly.
From Australia, this has been the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. This broadcast is in text, audio and video and is accessed on wia.org.au.
Courtesy of Bevan, VK5 BD's ATV and YouTube channel, this has been WIA National News. We're back now, live and local, and your voice, your callbacks. And don't forget, tick like.
Hello there, this is VK3OTN, the official station of the Radio Amateurs Oldtimers Club of Australia, with this month's news and information bulletin for September 2022 for members and friends of the club. I am Andrew, VK3 Charlie Alpha Hotel. Details of times and frequencies of when to hear these broadcasts are available at the club's website, www.raotc.org.au. These news broadcasts are available for download for up to 6 months, just in case you miss the original broadcast or want to listen to it again, from the club's website. That website once again is www.raotc.org.au.
Hello there. I'm Bill Roper, VK3BR, with RAOTC Club News. New member. I'm pleased to extend a warm welcome to new club member number 1839, Ian Bedson, VK5ZBI. Welcome, Ian. Silent Key. It is with sadness that I report the passing of Kevin Parsons, VK2JS. Kevin passed away in 2021, but I've only recently been advised. Let us pause for a few moments in memory of our departed colleague. New RAOTC bank account, and this is most important. The RAOTC no longer banks with Westpac and now has an account with the Bendigo Bank. It is important that all club members are aware of this change when paying monies to the club. Full details of our new banking arrangements appear on the reverse side of the address fly sheet that was with your copy of the September edition of OTN Journal, and also on the RAOTC's website. September edition of OTN Journal. This edition of OTN unfortunately was delayed by a week in being posted out to club members due to the unexpected change of bankers. It was sent to the post office last Monday, the 29th of August, and members should already have received their copy. If you have not received your copy in the post as yet, hopefully it should arrive very shortly. AGM 2022. This year's AGM will take place on Thursday, the 15th of September, and will be conducted online using Zoom. All wishing to participate will need to register their participation by Thursday, the 8th of September, and full details of this are on the back page of September's OTN and also on the RAOTC's website. The committee looks forward to a good turnout from members all around Australia. Melbourne September Luncheon. This luncheon will take place on Thursday the 22nd of September. Full details are on the back page of September's OTN and also on the RAOTC's website. Please note that this luncheon will take place at a new location, the Caulfield RSL, and all monies paid by electronic funds transfer to attend must be paid to the RAOTC's new bank account at the Bendigo Bank. Of course, you can also pay by a cheque in the mail. And now over to Ron Cook, VK3AFW.
A couple of my local radio club members are living in retirement or aged care facilities and are no longer on the air, and another one is soon to join them. I hope we can keep him on air and perhaps get a couple of the others back as well. If you are entering into such a place, the first thing to do is to inquire about pursuing your hobby. Many of these places have a men's shed, which is equipped with a bench and a few tools and maybe a wood turning lathe. You might be able to set up a station there if it seems too hard to do it in your room. A fairly modern all-band, all-mode station needs only about 7 inches by 9 inches footprint, and with a power supply, an ATU would take up perhaps 10 inches in height, maybe a little less. This can easily be fitted into a cupboard or lockable drawer in a cabinet. What to do about the aerial? Well, wire antennas covering 2 or more bands can be erected with minimal visual impact. Mobile whips can be mounted on a balcony rail. A multi-band vertical might be able to be erected on the men's shed. I have seen CB antennas in exactly that situation. A slim jim hung from the blind rail will improve the capability of a handheld radio. Of course, you won't necessarily have the station set up that is as good as the one you had before, but given a compromise or two, almost anything is possible. If you do find yourself in a retirement facility where not even a small whip is allowed, and you decide radio is too hard to set up, don't forget you can use not just email, but Skype to keep in contact. Most facilities these days have a community computer for just such a purpose. Otherwise, you might be able to get an internet cable or a Wi-Fi connection in your room. And there's always the USB telephone broadband connection, which should be feasible for around $20 per month. And as a last resort, there is the pen and paper.
Thanks, Ron. That article was first broadcast in 2012, and many aspects of it are still relevant today. What wasn't mentioned was there are now other ways to keep an active interest in what's on air. There are a multitude of software-defined radios, or SDRs, which you can listen to, located throughout the world. And these allow you to listen to what's going on the various HF bands. Often the signals you hear are a higher quality than what you may have once had at home. In addition to SDRs, there is a system called Echolink. Echolink allows you to connect to a VHF or UHF repeater via the internet from anywhere in the world using a personal computer or mobile phone device. These work by using a transceiver that's within the range of a repeater and extend the microphone and loudspeaker to the internet connected device. The software to use it is free and is available for all popular operating systems, be it Apple, Microsoft Windows, Android, and even Linux. You must, however, be registered to use Echolink, and once again, this is also free. As part of the registration process, you'll be asked to furnish details of your amateur license and usually some form of ID, such as a passport or a driver's license, to ensure the registered user is indeed who they say they are. Now, it's over to Clive, VK6CSW, who tells us a little about some early electromechanically tuned radios.
With a whir and a clunk. If you've seen the electromechanical tuning mechanism of the SCR522 VHF RT set in operation, you'd never forget how it whirred and clunked when changing channels. Many old-timers will remember these sets, and for some it will have been their introduction to voice communications on 2 meters and possibly even 6 meters. I was lucky enough to have used the set for its original purpose as an airborne VHF radio telephone during my RAF pilot training in 1955. What was the SCR-522 and how did it come about? SCR, by the way, means Set Complete Radio, the term dating back to World War I, when it was one of several designators used by the American Army Signals Corps to describe equipment purposes. The SCR-522 was a voice-only, 4-channel, crystal-controlled aircraft VHF transmitter-receiver covering 100 to 156 MHz, built in America mostly by the Bendix Radio Corporation and introduced into service in 1943. Specifically, it was a BC625A 8-valve VHF transmitter and a BC624A 10-valve VHF receiver, each tuned by a motorized tuning unit, all housed in a single case. Power came from a separately housed rotary transformer, or dynamotor unit, operating from the aircraft's DC power supply. The complete RT system weighed about 100 pounds, or 46 kilograms, consumed around 300 watts, and had an RF power output of about 8 watts. The set was based on the British-designed TR1143 VHF RT set and was the most widely used RT set during World War II. Although the two sets differed internally, the British and American sets were interchangeable, a feature of prime importance during World War II with so many British and American aircraft operating together. The story behind the SCR-522 began with pre-war RAF fighter radio communications. Few people these days realise that most of the Spitfires and Hurricanes, which fought the Battle of Britain in 1940, communicated via HF, not VHF, between themselves and their sector controllers, the men who guided the fighters towards the attacking German aircraft. The HF set used in most RAF fighters until 1941 was the TR-9D, a simple battery-powered AM transmitter receiver covering 4.3 to 6.6 MHz. Its 2-channel crystal-controlled transmitter had a power output of just 1 watt, while the single-channel receiver was a simple TRF type. It wasn't even a superhead. Low power and a short, inefficient wire aerial restricted the air-to-air range to about 5 miles, while the air-to-ground range was some 35 to 40 miles, due to the more powerful ground equipment with better aerials. It didn't take a Spitfire long to cover 40 miles. To overcome this limited range, HF repeater stations, linked by landline back to sector operations centres, were installed at strategic locations. Britain's Chain-Home radar defences looked out to sea and could only track German raiders until they crossed the coast. By the same token, RAF fighters scrambled from inland airfields could not be radar tracked. To overcome this problem, the second channel of the TR-9D transmitter was used for a direction-finding system codenamed Pipsqueak. A clockwork-driven contactor unit in the fighter caused the HF set to transmit a carrier for 14 seconds of each minute, during which time the pilot's RT was inoperative. Ground-based CRDF stations took bearings on these transmissions, which enabled the sector controller to know the whereabouts of his aircraft and to vector them towards the incoming German raiders. Pipsqueak was switched off prior to engagement to allow pilots continuous RT contact. Perhaps the miracle was that these obsolescent 1930s radios, powered by a 2-volt accumulator and a 150-volt HT battery, worked well enough for the RAF to win the Battle of Britain, but clearly something better was needed. Just prior to the war, the RAF had ordered for evaluation a small number of hand-built VHF 4-channel amplitude-modulated transmitter receivers designated TR1133. These sets, which covered 100 to 156 MHz, had a 10-watt crystal-controlled transmitter, a VFO-controlled receiver, both tuned electromechanically, plus an audio amplifier for transmitter modulation and receiver output, all housed in a single box weighing about 45 pounds. The receiver IF bandwidth was 300 kHz, giving some leeway for drift. Two impulse-type electric motors drove the tuning mechanism which selected the appropriate transmitter crystal and operated a number of slides, cams, rods and bell cranks to mechanically position 5 tuning circuits in the transmitter and 3 circuits in the receiver to any one of 4 preset channels. Hence all the whirring and clunking as channels were changed. Each channel was pre-tuned prior to flight, and the transmitter could be either manually keyed or vox operated. A modified pipsqueak DF system using the same clockwork contactor mechanism as the HF set could be operated on each channel. From the pilot's perspective, HF and VHF pipsqueak were much the same, though technically they were quite different. Power for the set came from a rotary transformer housed in a separate box. All up, the complete VHF RT system weighed over 100 pounds, significantly heavier than the TR9D, but of much better performance. The companion VHF ground equipment was a 50-watt crystal-controlled transmitter and a VFO-tuned receiver, which, like the TR1133 airborne receiver, had an IF bandwidth of 300 kHz. If the use of VFO tuning at VHF seems unusual, we must remember that in Britain, at the start of World War II, supplies of quartz and crystal manufacturing facilities were limited. It was only later in the war that crystal production was hugely expanded. In October 1939, a month after hostilities began, 6 fighters of No. 66 Squadron commenced flight evaluation of the new VHF system. With an air-to-ground range of as much as 140 miles and an air-to-air range of over 100 miles, the superiority of VHF over HF was irrefutable, and a few days later the Chief of Air Staff approved the general introduction of VHF-RT into Fighter Command. Unfortunately, production delays prevented all RAF fighter squadrons from being re-equipped with VHF prior to the start of the Battle of Britain in July 1940, and in May 1940, with German air attack now inevitable, the decision was made to revert to the old-fashioned HF set. Fortunately, the TR1133 connectors had been made compatible with those of the TR9D, and it was possible to change over the radios and antennas of an entire fighter squadron in just a few hours. As more 1133 sets became available, they were introduced during the Battle of Britain, but by the battle's end in October 1940, HF still predominated. The changeover from HF to VHF was not completed until early March 1941. The next step was to crystal control the TR1133's receiver, and from this the mass production version, the TR1143, was born, but it still used the same electromechanical tuning arrangement. By mid-1941, almost all 1133s had been replaced by 1143s, and by 1942, the TR1143 was in large-scale mass production. America entered World War II in December 1941. Within a year, huge numbers of American warplanes were operating from RAF aerodromes in England, but because the Americans still used HF in preference to VHF, there were major problems with radio communications compatibility, especially with airfield control and where formations of British and American aircraft operated together. A joint USA-UK decision was made to produce a copy of the TR1143 built in America. The British also wanted a second source of supply should their own factories be destroyed through German bombing. The outcome was that the US Army Signals Corps completely redesigned the TR1143 internally, using valves and other components more suited to American production facilities, but packaged it in a case with plugs and sockets compatible with the TR1143. The number of electromechanically tuned circuits was reduced from 3 to 2 in the receiver and from 5 to 4 in the transmitter. The result was the set, complete, radio, Type 522, 4-channel VHF-RT set. From a user perspective, All three sets, the TR-1133, 43 and the SCR-522, were interchangeable. In those days, most British fighters had a 12-volt DC electrical system, whereas the Americans generally used 24 volts. Two dynamotor power supplies, one for each voltage, took care of this. The final twist of the story came with the introduction of the Air Ministry TR-5043, in effect the British version of the SCR-522. However, the internals were slightly different, and the build quality of the US version was said to be somewhat superior. These VHS sets were fitted to just about every Allied military aircraft that flew during the latter years of World War II, and many sets remained in use until the 1960s. Even then, not all were pensioned off. Many were used as emergency battery-powered ground-to-air radios in control towers, especially in Australia. Less well known is that the SCR-522 was used by the Navy and by the Army, the latter having a 12-volt vehicle version known as the SCR-542, which was used mainly for forward aircraft control. Post-war, huge quantities of these sets found their way onto the surplus market, and many old-timers will recall buying or even grinding suitable crystals to adapt them to 2-meter AM. Few, if any, will have restored that remarkable mechanical tuning system to working order simply because there was no need, but I can assure you, watching it whir and clunk was a memorable experience. When changing channels, there was a distinct pause as the electromechanics operated, during which time one just hoped that everything really would work. And it nearly always did.
You're listening to VK3OTN, the official station of the Radio Amateurs Old-Timers Club of Australia. The year 2022 is anniversary time for many broadcasters. There are several very important anniversaries being celebrated in 2022 by some well-known broadcasters. Many were founded by amateur operators nearly 100 years ago. The ABC is celebrating 90 years, along with Melbourne commercial broadcaster 3AW, celebrating 100 years of British broadcasting. And this article was sourced from the pages of QRZ.com by the BBC Amateur Radio Club. In 2022, the British Broadcasting Corporation is marking 100 years of broadcasting. The BBC Staff Amateur Radio Club, the Ariel Radio Group, was established in 1945, and there has been some form of ham radio club at the BBC ever since. The current team, the London BBC Radio Group, have secured the call sign GB100BBC to help in the celebrations. GB100BBC will be on air from the main shack at BBC Broadcasting House in central London and from other BBC premises and members' home QTHs around the UK. We are indebted to Ofcom, the UK regulator, which has permitted the call sign to be used for the entirety of 2022. Early BBC history. The British Broadcasting Company, as it was then called, was founded on 18th October 1922 by a group of wireless manufacturers. The Marconi Company was one of the group. A broadcasting studio was constructed within Marconi House on the Strand, London. The medium wave transmitter was housed in the same building, with antennas on the roof. The station was allocated the call sign 2LO. LO was for London. In the original 2LO transmitter, 22,500 volts ran through the system. The power output was 1.5 kilowatts on 820 kilohertz. At 5:33 p.m. on the 14th of November 1922, regular programming commenced, with a mixture of news, music, drama and talks. Programs were initially broadcast for just a few hours a day. By 1926, the transmission power had increased to 3 kilowatts, when an improved transmitter was established with antennas on the roof of Selfridge's department store in London. The studios were located at Savoy Hill. Several regional transmitters were installed around the UK carrying the same programming. The public were required to purchase a radio receiving licence, costing 10 shillings per annum. That equates to around £60 in today's currency, or around about 120 Australian dollars. In 1927, the British Broadcasting Corporation was established by Royal Charter and a Director General, Sir John Reef, was appointed. In November of the same year, Mulcahy used his Chelmsford base to make experimental Empire broadcast on 11750 kHz using the call sign G5SW with a power of 12 kilowatts. In 1930, King George V spoke to the whole British Empire from the House of Lords via the Chelmsford transmitting system, and 9510 kHz was added. By 1932, the BBC had outgrown the Savoy Hill studios, and a purpose-built centre was being commissioned. Broadcasting House was opened in May, with many architectural features created by the modernised designs of the day. The Empire service was formally inaugurated that December, with many programs from the new centre. In November 1936, the BBC started the television service with studios and a transmitter located at Alexandra Palace, a high point in North London that looked down over much of the city. It didn't last long. On the 1st of September 1939, at the outbreak of war, it was closed down with no official explanation, but it has been speculated that authorities were worried that the strong broadcast signal would act as an aid to enemy aircraft. The last program to be viewed was Mickey Mouse's Gala premiere. When TV returned in June 1946, the same Mickey Mouse program was the first thing to be aired. The BBC commenced foreign language radio broadcasting in January 1938 with a program in Arabic. This was soon followed by many more languages. In 1941, the BBC external service was transferred to their own building, Bush House. Now, for those working GB100 BBC, here is some QSL information. The team at the BBC Radio Group look forward to working you. We are not able to issue a schedule of our operations, but we hope you will find us using all bands and modes throughout 2022. A special commemorative QSL card will be available via the traditional bureau. We will send out a card upon receipt of your incoming card. You can also QSL via Logbook of the World and eQSL. Please carefully note we are unable to QSL directly under any circumstances. Please do not send any cards to the BBC Broadcasting House or to the participating individual club members. You will unfortunately not receive a response. And this article was sourced from the pages of QRZ.com by the BBC Amateur Radio Club.
Hello everyone, this is Clive, VK6 Charlie Sierra Whiskey, reminding you that the next lunchtime meeting for members and friends of the RAOTC is at the Bayswater Hotel, Bayswater, starting at around midday, and that the buffet is back on the menu once again. Everyone's welcome to join in and have an eyeball QSO, but do remember that WA public health rules apply in all restaurants.
You're listening to VK30TN and associated relay stations. And in keeping with tradition, we conclude this month's broadcast with a short story. A disreputable-looking man goes into a bar and orders a drink. The bartender says, "No way, I don't think you can pay for it." "You're right," the man says. "I don't have any money, but if I show you something you haven't seen before, would you give me a drink? Only if it's not risque, says the bartender. Deal, the man says, and reaches into his pocket and pulls out a hamster. It runs across the room, up to the piano, jumps on the keyboard, and starts playing Gershwin. The bartender gives the man a drink, saying, "You're right, I've never seen anything like that before, and he's really good." The man downs the drink and asks for another. "Money or another miracle, or else no drink," says the bartender. The man reaches into his coat and pulls out a frog. He puts it on the bar, and the frog starts to sing beautifully. A stranger rushes over and offers the man $300 for the frog. "It's a deal," the man says, taking the money. He gives the frog to the stranger, who runs out of the bar. "Are you crazy?" says the bartender. "You sold a singing frog for $300? It must be worth millions." "Not so," says the man. "The hamster is also a ventriloquist."
That's about all we have for you this month, and we hope you found something of interest. Thanks for being with us, and we hope you will join in the callbacks, where callbacks are taken. We look forward to being with you on the first Monday of next month, 73 from VK3 OTN, the station of the Radio Amateurs Old Timers Club of Australia.